Hey everyone, it is Christine, and today I want to talk to you a bit about the 2-year sleep regression. It is something that I see mamas posting about all of the time and, on Facebook, online forums, that kind of thing, and people are like, what do I do with my 2-year-old? They just won't sleep. They're not napping. They've gone from like being a really good sleeper and they're not doing anything, or they weren't ever really the best sleeper, but now things are just like so bad and so difficult. Let me start out by saying you're not alone. It's probably not anything that you're doing wrong. It is very normal. They do have this crazy sleep regression around age 2, and not all toddlers will go through it, but so far I will say that my 2 children, both of them have experienced it, but to different degrees. And so I just wanted to give you some tips and advice for how to cope with it, give you some validation that you're not alone, you're not a crazy parent, and I don't think that your expectations of your toddler are too high. Most 2-year-olds still need a nap at this age. So if they're like bucking their nap and they don't want anything to do with it, it's not because they don't need it. It's just because there's like funky sleep going on. So let's just jump into the tips and hopefully it will be helpful to you. Okay, so your 2-year-old is just like not sleeping anymore. They're staying awake during their whole nap, or they're taking forever to fall asleep, or they're waking up through the night, and you're like, what do I do? Well, the first thing I'm going to say to do is to remain consistent, because think about it from your toddler's point of view. They are growing at an alarming rate, like so fast. And mentally, I'm like, obviously physically they're growing, but mentally they are learning so many new things. Like, I think of my daughter, who's 2.5 at the moment, and how much her vocabulary has expanded since she was 2, and it is like huge. It's incredibly, it is incredible how much her vocabulary, I cannot speak, has grown since in just 6 months. So try and take it from that perspective and think consistency is going to be a huge help to them. When everything else is changing, when they're like grappling with what's what and understanding new concepts and everything, having some like consistent boundaries, consistent foundations to their day, to their routine is really, really going to help them to have an anchor point and something to go back to. So even though you think maybe everything needs to be changed up, don't yet. And I'm going to get onto that into another point. Just stay consistent for now. Okay, so the second tip is to give it time, and this goes hand in hand with remaining consistent. We can, as parents, I know that I have a tendency to do this, but we something goes wrong or something's not happening the way it always has, and we immediately think, oh, something needs to change. Okay, let's switch up the schedule. Let's like drop the nap. My recommendation, and one that I've seen given across many other platforms by several friends of mine who are basically sleep experts. I'm not going to group myself in with them. Like, they're real clever. But I've seen it said so many times, and I know this to be true as well as a mother who's tried it, is to just give it some time. I would say 2 weeks of funky sleep at least before you decide to go in and change anything. Because sometimes they'll resist the nap for 2 or 3 days, but then they'll go back to napping. So give it some time. Don't be super quick to go in and change everything up. And then point number 3, after you have given it time, if things are not getting better, then it's time to reevaluate the schedule. Does your child need less sleep maybe? Perhaps they need more sleep. Perhaps they're overtired, and so things are just going haywire. I do find at this age that sleep needs tend to drop. For instance, my daughter still usually takes about a 2-hour nap, hour and a half, 2-hour nap during the day. However, she is awake a lot later at night. So she doesn't fall asleep till 8:30, whereas she used to fall asleep by 7:30. So she doesn't need as much sleep. She still needs that nap to get through the day, though. If she doesn't have that nap for like a couple days in a row, it's like, it's crazy. Although their sleep needs change, it may just mean that you need to move things around, not necessarily get rid of certain things like naps. Don't get rid of naps. Please don't get rid of naps at this age. My son was so challenging in this time frame for sleep. He was always a little bit tricky with sleep, and it took a lot more work to get into a consistent schedule. But he went through lots of regressions where he would nap for a certain amount of time, and I was like, okay, we're dropping the nap, like he just doesn't eat anymore, and then he'd go back to napping. So just look at your schedule before you decide to drop the nap entirely. That's what I'm saying, because like I've said it a few times, most 2-year-olds still need the nap. And I feel like you can drop the nap for a day and be like, oh, they were fine. But once you've dropped the nap and it's like 3 consecutive days in a row when they haven't had any naps, then you kind of see what they're really going to be like on no naps. And from my experience, most of the time it's not great. So try and tweak the schedule a little bit, maybe push bedtime back a bit, maybe cap the nap a little bit, but don't get rid of it entirely. Okay, so the next thing to think about is just troubleshooting. Could there be things that are disrupting them that you hadn't thought of before? Maybe it's the temperature of their room. Is it too hot, too cold? That definitely affects sleep. I know it affects my sleep, so it wouldn't be crazy to think it is affecting your toddler's sleep. The next thing to think about is screen time. Some children are super sensitive to having screen time before bed. It can upset them. It can prevent them from going into a nice deep sleep. So maybe try cut that. I know some people don't do screen time at all. That's fine. But if you do, like I do, try and maybe just cut back on that and see if that makes a difference. Give things a go. Fear. This is the age where I have personally found my children like show genuine fear about things. They can be scared of the dark. They can just have like, and it's really hard at this age too because they can't necessarily express that fear very well yet. Their vocabulary may not be incredibly established, and you know, even as adults, we find it difficult to express what we're actually scared of. Sometimes it's just a sense that we're frightened, but we can't put our finger on what it actually is. So bear in mind that that is a genuine thing, and try and be patient with your child. It does get a little bit difficult because they are smart at this age and they can kind of play on it sometimes, but give them grace and do your best to try and eliminate those fears and talk to them about it during the daytime so it's not such a big deal at bedtime or nap time or whatever. But it is something to definitely keep in mind. Okay, and then the last thing I'm going to talk about is enforcing rest time. I see mamas be like, okay, it's time to drop the nap, and I'm so sad because there's not going to be a break during the day. Like, it's just going to be full on. No. No. Rest time is 100% something that you can be using and something I highly recommend you use. One, it's great because if your child is actually not ready to drop that nap, it gives them the opportunity to nap if they need to. 2, it gives your child a chance to rest and have like a break from all the stimulation around them. And 3, it gives you a break. You need that as a mama. There's nothing wrong with like feeling like you need a break. It's normal and it's fine. So I recommend, regardless of whether your child is going to take a nap, that you set up the situation so that they still get the opportunity to rest. For my son, he is now 4, so he has officially dropped his nap, but he's been doing rest time for a while now. And he has an hour of listening to an audiobook and playing quietly with some toys. And then he has an hour of watching a show. I would not do that for a 2-year-old. I wouldn't do the show for a 2-year-old. When he first started rest time, it was an hour of lying down in his bed and trying to sleep. And if he didn't fall asleep in the hour, then we did the audiobook and the toys. So whatever you're comfortable with and that looks like, I would seriously recommend you do it. It is possible. You can teach your child to entertain themselves and rest. It is a highly valuable skill for them to learn, and it's really important for them to be able to just switch off from everything, because even though they might not take a nap, it'll still give them a bit of a mental break, and it'll give you a mental break so that if they are hard work in the afternoon, at least you've got a little bit more patience and you can dig a little bit deeper to sort of cope with it all. Okay, and the last thing I just wanted to address is sometimes as mamas we can take it very personally when our children aren't doing what we think they should be doing. You know, if they aren't sleeping as well as they should be or behaving as well as they should be. I just want to remind you that their actions are not a reflection of you a lot of the time. I'm going to say the majority of the time. There are like instances where there's just poor parenting, but I think for the most part, if you're watching something like this, you're an active parent that is trying to do the best for their child. And so I want to encourage you that you're probably not doing anything wrong, that it's just a normal thing that happens, and you can troubleshoot and do your best, and they may still not sleep well. And that's not your fault. It's just life. And it is a phase. It will pass. Things do get better, and you're going to go have troubles in the future again. That's okay. But I think with putting all of these things in place with being consistent, you know, tweaking the schedule, things like that, it gives you a good foundation to go off of, and it just gives you some direction. But please know that you're a good parent, you're a good mom, and even though children are not as simple as like, do this and this will happen, you know, they are not robots, they are human beings, and they have different emotional, physical needs. And so that's just something to be aware of as well, that just because it doesn't work doesn't mean you're actually doing anything wrong. So I hope these tips are helpful. I hope that it helps to improve your toddler's sleep, because it is rough when you have a toddler that you know needs to take a nap, but they just won't fall asleep, and then they're like a bear in the afternoon. It's rough. So that's the other thing I'm just going to recommend. If they don't take a nap, do an early bedtime. They need it. You need it. It's important. And on the days where my toddler doesn't nap, it's like bedtime has to happen at this time. Otherwise, the house is going to fall apart. So that's another little tip in there that you can hang on to and use when you need to. But yeah, thank you for watching, and like the video. If you're watching this on YouTube, go ahead and like the video so I know that it was helpful to you, and I will see you next time. Bye.